Some horror movies are really nice. They try to keep everything on the screen and you know you've got that separation between you. Unless of course you're watching The Ring. This list is not about those films. I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 more horror movies which broke the fourth wall to scare you. Number 10, Creepshow. George A. Romero's cult classic centres around young Billy, who's chastised by his father Stan for reading a horror comic called Creepshow. We are then shown 5 tales of terror from the comic involving monsters, zombies, giant bugs, and space plants. Once each of these chapters conclude, the action cuts back to Billy before moving on to the next sinister saga. Due to this setup, viewers should quickly get a grasp of the movie's framework. In the comic book world, anything can happen, but since Billy lives in the normal world, everything is grounded in reality. Or so it seems. In the final scene, Billy becomes so tired of his abusive father, he repeatedly stabs a voodoo doll of Stan. As Stan screams in pain, exaggerated lines of light spray across the screen, indicating this story doesn't take place in the real world after all. The camera then zooms out, revealing that everything we saw took place in, you guessed it, a Creepshow comic. Not only was this the perfect way to leave blindsided viewers, it perfectly fits with Creepshow's motif that nothing is ever as it seems. Number 9, Videodrome. In David Cronenberg's sci-fi mindbender, TV exec Max Wren, played by James Woods, stumbles upon a pirate TV channel called Videodrome that depicts sadomasochistic acts. Unbeknownst to Max, the channel carries a radio signal that creates brain tumors, causing viewers to experience a higher level of reality, or it just makes them hallucinate. As Max spends more time watching, he sees himself speaking directly to its host, Nikki, and merging with technology. Reality continues to blend with the TV world, making it impossible for Max to tell what's real anymore. In the closing moments, Nikki shows Max a scene of himself on television embracing his new flesh, before blowing his head off with his mutated gun hand. Max reenacts the same act, locking eyes with the camera and uttering, "Long live the new flesh," before ending his life. Based on the premise, it feels like Videodrome couldn't have ended any other way. Not only does this story deal with fusion between fantasy and reality, the entity on the television is able to communicate with her watchers. As a result, it's fitting how the film concludes with Max talking to us, breaking through his world and into our own. Number 8, House on Haunted Hill, 1959. In 1959's House on Haunted Hill, eccentric millionaire Frederick Lauren, played by Vincent Price, invites 5 guests to his mansion, which is supposedly haunted. If the guests stay the whole night, Lauren promises to reward them with $10,000 each. In the end, it's revealed the house isn't haunted, and Lauren concocted the whole scheme to murder his manipulative wife. He probably didn't need to bring anyone over to do that. Nevertheless, one guest, Watson, is adamant there are supernatural forces among them. Just before the movie ends, Watson looks at the viewers, warning them ghosts will come for you. It may be a pretty straightforward fourth wall break, but it's effective since it's the last thing viewers hear, apart from one last maniacal laugh. But that's not all. House on Haunted Hill was directed by William Castle, who's known for concocting elaborate gimmicks for his movies. In fact, our previous such list included another William Castle classic, The Tingler. So it's no surprise Castle devised another way for the film to break the fourth wall. When House on Haunted Hill was originally released in theaters, a plastic skeleton was programmed to pop up in front of the screen during a key scene, scaring the living daylights out of its audience. It may sound like a corny idea now, and to be fair, even back then, but this gimmick was sure to have given plenty of people the fright of their lives. Number 7. The Twilight Zone, the movie. The Twilight Zone, the movie, opens with 2 guys, Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks, driving on the country road, discussing the original Twilight Zone series. The passenger then beckons his friend to pull over so he can show him something really scary. When the driver agrees, his friend gleefully turns away from the screen. After a moment he swings back, revealing he is transformed into a hideous monster. Letting out an animalistic growl, the shape-shifting beast strangles his victim while the iconic theme plays in the background. Although The Twilight Zone is a classic show, it's quite campy by modern standards, which is why many fans didn't expect this film adaptation to start with such a bone-chilling jump scare. What makes this prologue work so well is how it creates a personal connection with viewers. Although the scene is shot normally at first, it's directed straight at the camera when the driver mentions the Twilight Zone, as if he expects us to answer. By encouraging viewers to get invested, it feels like this creature is going to attack them, magnifying their fear factor exponentially. Number 6. Stir of Echoes. In this supernatural thriller, paranormal believer Lisa hypnotizes a cynical father, Tom, hoping to open his mind. However, the sequence is framed in such a way that it feels like the audience is being put under a spell. The scene begins with Lisa looking into the camera lens, urging listeners to relax. The screen slowly turns black, simulating Tom's eyes closing. Maintaining a monotonous but tranquil tone, Lisa asks Tom to picture himself in a cinema. This scene was far more effective for anyone who watched Stir of Echoes on the big screen. Slowly but surely, a word comes into focus on the screen, which reads, sleep, finally putting Tom under Lisa's control. It's a terrifying moment, not just to watch, but to experience. It follows genuine techniques utilized by professional hypnotists, giving the scene a great sense of authenticity. It proved so effective, a loud sound was added in to perk up viewers who'd found themselves nodding off. Number 5. The House That Dripped Blood. In this Hammer anthology, Inspector Holloway is hired to look into an abandoned rental home. Speaking to the estate agent, A.J. Stoker, Holloway is informed that each of the previous tenants met with a terrible fate, often involving a supernatural force. During the climax, Holloway admits he doesn't believe in Stoker's ramblings and marches into the sinister house to learn the truth for himself. Upon entering the basement, Holloway is horrified to find 2 blood-sucking ghouls who immediately kill him. Just before this story is about to wrap up, Stoker turns to the audience, asking if they'd figured out the house isn't haunted in a conventional way, but instead manifests the personality of whoever dwells in it. Since the tenants and Holloway harbored evil in their hearts, the building lashed out, ending their lives. When Stoker points out that the house desires a new owner, he suggests the viewer would like it. There's nothing to be afraid of, provided you're the right sort of person. Even though this little exchange isn't necessary, it's an excellent way to get under the viewer's skin just before the credits roll. Number 4. Anguish. Anguish is an obscure little gem that follows crazed psychic Alice, played by Zelda Rubinstein, who hypnotizes her son John to steal people's eyeballs. It's never really explained why. As soon as Anguish begins, it's clear these events take place within a movie called Mommy. However, the cinema patrons are oblivious there's a slasher fanatic working his way through the building, reenacting the murders from Mommy on unsuspecting victims. Since Anguish uses the film-within-a-film framework, it breaks the fourth wall pretty early on. While being evaluated at the hospital, Patty is suddenly attacked by John, the fictional character from Mommy. John assures Patty that he's merely a figment of her imagination before lunging for her eyes. The camera then pulls back on cinema patrons looking at a screen, meaning all of these events occurred in another movie. That's right, all this time Anguish was secretly a film within a film within a film. Number 3. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. Don Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers revolves around a doctor, Miles Bennell, played by Kevin McCarthy, who discovers alien plants called pods in his hometown. To Bennell's horror, he learns anyone who comes into contact with the extraterrestrial spores is transformed into an emotionless alien copy. Over time, his colleagues, friends, and wife are assimilated, causing Bennell to run onto a highway in panic. After seeing a transport truck loaded with dozens of pods, the doctor becomes hysterical, believing it's only a matter of time before the whole world is turned into pod people. Out of desperation, he begins hollering at passing motorists, warning them of the imminent threat. He then turns directly to the audience, uttering the movie's most famous line, "They're already here, you're next." Even though invasion is ultimately prevented, this moment is still creepy as hell, primarily because of the genuine terror etched on Bennell's face. Number 2, Omen, 1976. Before Richard Donner took to the skies with Superman, the esteemed director traumatized an entire generation with this supernatural horror, The Omen. In the opening, respected diplomat Robert Thorne learns his wife suffered a miscarriage, compelling him to adopt a newborn called Damien. Over time, Robert discovers the child is the Antichrist and destined to bring about the apocalypse. Despite Robert's efforts to destroy the boy, the forces of Satan successfully kill him and everyone else who intended to harm Damien. In the final scene, Damien can be seen attending his parents' funeral. As the camera zooms in on the back of his head, Damien suddenly turns around, grinning innocently at the camera. Even though Damien doesn't utter a word, his mischievous smile is sure to leave anyone rattled. Interestingly, Richard Donner created this defining moment by playing mind games with a young actor. After Harvey Stevens turned around, the director yelled, "Don't laugh, don't you laugh, if you laugh I won't be your friend," urging the 4-year-old to smile. It may have been an unconventional tactic, but it helped create one of the most spine-tingling endings in the history of horror. Number 1, American Psycho. American Psycho explores the life of Patrick Bateman, a banker who's carved a public persona of a content businessman. In reality, Bateman is an empty and sadistic psychopath who cares for nothing but himself. Although his yuppie co-workers and vapid girlfriend are unaware of the darkness harbouring in Bateman, he constantly narrates his real thoughts, cluing us into his true nature. For most of the running time, it feels like we have full access to Bateman's deranged mindset, a privilege no character in the movie has. But everything that was believed about Bateman is called into question in the last few minutes. While speaking to a colleague, he discovers his co-worker, Paul Allen, is alive and well, despite the fact Bateman seemingly split his head open with a hatchet. In that moment, viewers, and Bateman, can no longer tell how much of what they heard and saw actually happened. Did Bateman imagine he killed Paul? Was any of it real? Although there are plenty of films where the protagonist speaks to the audience to give them a great insight into their mind, American Psycho achieved the opposite. In this climax, we somehow have less understanding of Bateman than we did before. Even though it was scary when we thought Bateman was a monster, it's scarier when we realised we have no idea what he is.